Hey, this is Madeline Sklar.
And Suze Cooper, and you're listening to All Things Audio.
I just want to tell everybody we have breaking news. I cannot wait to talk about our breaking news, Suze, because you know how when we talk about on mobile at the bottom right, that little purple bubble, and we always say entity, and there's always like that sound in our voice, like how much we do not like calling it entity. Twitter has officially renamed it.
It's amazing. I mean, we've made no secret of the fact that we felt like entity was such a word. It's just such a, this is what we'll call it while we're building it type word. And then it kind of got rolled out into beta and then rolled out a bit further, and it's still being called officially entity.
When you go to the replay and listen, because your voice changes every time you say, it's so funny. I don't even like to say it because I just can't stand the name. So I just call it chat, because Spaces chat, because that to me that's what it is. But every time, go listen to past, weeks of this room. Every time you say entity, you always have that sound in your voice. I love it. It's because it's like I dislike this, but I'm going to say it anyway.
I do air quotes while I'm saying it each time, Madeline. I'm totally aware of the entity because it's just such a stupid name. It is really silly. So what have they officially decided to call it?
It is officially called Spaces Replies, and I'm good with that. I like it because it's what it is. All right, chat replies. Look, entity made no sense. I don't know who named it at Twitter. Terrible name. And I think most people agreed with us that it didn't make sense. But it was officially announced through a recent Twitter Spaces from Twitter Spaces. That's pretty meta, the way I said that, huh? As it was coming out, I'm like, oh, this is meta. So let me just make it super meta. But yeah, somebody, Joe Dale had said, what is the chat in Twitter Spaces called now? Because actually the first tweet I put in the nest was from Michael Sterling, who's here live with us. Hopefully he'll chat with us soon. But he had quoted Danny Singh saying, we don't call it entity anymore. And I remember when I saw that, I was like, oh, I hadn't listened to that Spaces yet, but this is interesting. And I went and listened to that Twitter Spaces from the little community chat. And I was like, yes, finally, they've listened and they've renamed it. So I felt like that was our big breaking news we had to start with today, because I just feel like it's time to rejoice that there's a real name that makes sense for what we're looking at when we're playing around with the little chat reply.
And I think we're kind of agreed now that it's quite a useful feature as well. I mean, I was tentative at first, but I do quite like it. I quite like the fact we've got the back channel. People can get involved, particularly for this kind of format where we're recording first out, and the two of us are having the conversation. It means we can kind of really get a steer on what the listeners are thinking as we go along, which I think is really great.
I agree. And hopefully everybody just noticed that it turned purple and says 1, because I just put in a GIF of me waving hello to everybody. So that's me saying hi. And I'm just really thrilled that this is a feature that is being embraced by so many people. So many people have been talking about it for quite some time, that they really like having this. It's been rolled out to everyone now. Initially, I had it way before most people did. You didn't have it for a really long time.
That's right. And in fact, we ran the space on your account
a couple times, yeah.
And it was useful, and people liked using it during All Things Audio. So it did take a while for me to get access to it. Yeah.
Yeah. And, I was reading a really interesting thread the other day that somebody was commenting about how, and this would make sense to me, that Twitter Spaces hosts should really get access to some of these features before others do. Sometimes it's very random, like who gets features and who doesn't. And some hosts have complained that they can't even test some of these features, but other people in their rooms can. And that they can see things that they can't. So I think that was actually, I thought it was really such a great idea. I had to comment on that thread because I was like, yes, Spaces hosts should really get first access to some of these really cool features in Spaces so that, we can show them off when we're hosting a room. And I was thrilled that I had this new Spaces replies early being that I'm co-hosting in 3 different rooms each week, it gave me this opportunity to really showcase it. And I really appreciate that a couple of times you're like, hey, why don't you be the host instead of the co-host? So that way we can use it off of your account, just so people can see that this is a great feature. This is something we got to give Spaces feedback on so they know that this is extremely valuable for engagement, for community building, just for so many things. So I'm really happy that they finally came around and rolled it out to everyone. So we all have it.
Yeah, and it can seem rather random as to who gets access to what feature when as well. I mean, I know we were talking about something last week, probably the audio tab, because we spoke a lot about that last week. So anyone who's interested in that and hasn't had our episode from last week, please do go back and listen. But I think you were saying that Don, who's here in the space now, had access to something on there and yet had never been a host of a space or whatever. And you just think it's tricky, isn't it? How are they working out who gets what?
It's always random. I've always noticed it's been super random the way Twitter does that. But who knows? Maybe they'll start being better about some of these things that are just specifically for Spaces, go first to Spaces hosts. Or even like that first group of beta hosts in the beginning, like just, if they want a small group, start like that and let the people that are using this all the time, or people that are hosting at least once a week, give them that access, because then they can be showing it off in their rooms, like that 100 emoji. Wouldn't it be nice if some of us Power Spaces hosts, they're doing this all at least once a week, like if we could be the ones showing it off instead of just these random people? It's like, how'd you get it? So that's my thought on that. I'm so excited because I've got some really cool tweets I want to share with you all from Andrew at Spaces Dashboard, because he is really showing us some super creative ways to promote your spaces. And I know plenty of people that come to this room live or listen to the podcast version. They're like us. They're hosting their own spaces. They're using this great feature in Twitter. But discoverability has been an issue. It's been this ongoing issue. And now I feel like it's more than ever with this new audio tab, which, like you said, we have talked about it. We'll talk about it some more today. It's frustrating because so much of the discoverability is gone. And I know one of the things Twitter told you was, hey, you need to be promoting your room, which we already do. Like, right? We promote our rooms pretty heavily. We could always use Twitter's help with this discoverability, but it's great seeing some ways other people are promoting themselves. And Andrew has been sharing some really interesting tweets in an effort to promote his Spaces dashboard, which is awesome. But he's so smart in promoting hosts that are out there doing these rooms and spaces. And so it's kind of like with him, it's a 2-for-1. I'm going to promote Twitter's Spaces dashboard, but I'm going to do it through promoting these amazing hosts. And he's always spotlighting different hosts. I love how he's doing all this. And so these tweets really caught my attention. He had made these really cool JPEGs for Hosteline for his spaces. I DM'd him and I said, hey, could you make one of these cool ones for me? Because I'll use it and I'll promote Spaces dashboard. Because what a great way to send somebody to one link, which is, basically your profile page at Spaces Dashboard, which is, by the way, a free site. If you guys are not using it as a host and or using it for discoverability, you're really missing out. Spacesdashboard.com. But I asked him, could you make one of these JPEGs for me? He did. So that's what this tweet is, where he tweeted out through the Spaces Dashboard Twitter account. And it has all 3 of the rooms that I co-host each week. And it's just a real simple, you tap on that image, it takes you to my page over at Spaces Dashboard, which is super cool. You have one, Susan. Anybody that's hosting can access this. And it has so much information in there. Is so much more than what Twitter gives us. I wish Twitter gave us a page like this. But that's why we love Andrew, because he did it for us, right? Where we can just get all this data. We can go back to all these previous spaces we've hosted. We can easily access the replays. But it goes a step further. As we mentioned, you're technically the host of this room. I'm just the co-host. So with some of these third-party tools like this, all the ones that you're technically hosting, I'm co-hosting, are gone. Like, they're not going to show up on these kinds of sites. But Spaces dashboard collects that. And when you scroll down on my page, you first see the ones that I host, then you see co-hosted spaces. And it's all you, Sue. I see your awesome profile picture on all of these because you're technically the host and I'm the co-host. And I love that I can easily get to all that information, but then there's more. When you scroll down even more, it's going to show spaces you've spoken in. So other people's spaces will be in here because you were a speaker. So it's such a great, I just can't say enough about it because it's such a great free tool. But Andrew is so smart with helping people promote their own room. So I wanted to show off these great tweets because this is just another way for me to be promoting the 3 rooms each week that I'm co-hosting. And then when you look at the one that he set up for Hostling, there's another tweet in there. And I really want to point this out because this is such an interesting tweet. Did you get a chance to look at this one closely, Suze, to see like, it's not your typical tweet. It's actually done through the ads platform.
Yeah, that's right. And that's what Andrew was, really hot on right at the start of Spaces being launched, wasn't he? I mean, he really came in and said, look, you can use the media studio, you can use the ads platform without placing an ad to really create something that's eye-catching, scroll-stopping, and will get people to know about your space and help with this discoverability. And that's exactly what this is with Hosteline's Monetize Monday one. You can scroll through, see the different graphics. It's just such a clever way of using what is already in the platform. Let's face it, Twitter haven't necessarily helped out with discoverability, and even now this new audio tab, I mean, I could still definitely do another full episode just on that. Really, I genuinely feel like it's taken us a step backwards. So things like this, when you've got Twitter saying, come on, hosts, you need to be marketing your own space, promoting them, whatever, things like this are going to be invaluable to us. We need to think around outside the box, think around those different things that we do have at our fingertips that aren't going to cost a fortune to put in place. And this is just a great way of doing it. And what a great example as well that you've picked out here. It's really cool.
Yeah, and this is called a carousel tweet. And I don't think a lot of people know about this. And the reason why, it's not something you can just do in your composed tweet section of either the desktop version of Twitter or on mobile. You have to be in the ads platform. If you notice with this tweet, if you're looking at it right now, and we'll make sure for those listening to the podcast version, it's in the show notes. You just look at this tweet from Andrew at Spaces Dashboard, and it's the one for Hostling Money. And there are literally 5 different JPEGs. It's a carousel, just like what you see on Instagram when you do an Instagram carousel is very similar. And you can, what's amazing about this is that when the first one comes up, Monetize Monday, I can click on that and it's taking me right to the recording from that particular hosted room on September 5th. But then if I go back into the tweet and I scroll across in the carousel to the next one, it's like I can access each of these different JPEGs with the individual space associated with it, which is really awesome. And if you're not familiar with how to do this, it's so simple. You have to go into the ads platform. If you're not familiar with the ads platform, it's super easy. Just go to ads.twitter.com, or when you're on desktop and you're on your left side navigation, you see more at the bottom, click on that and you should see ads in there. And you want to get into that ads platform. If you've never used it before, it just takes a moment to set it up. They do require a credit card on the file. Does not mean you have to buy ads. The beauty of this tweet you're looking at is it didn't cost anything. It's a free tweet. There's an easy way to do this. It's just knowing how to do it. And if you look at how Andrew uses Twitter, he's taking advantage of these Twitter cards that can only be done through the ads platform, because what they do at Twitter, and it's actually kind of smart if you think about it, they're allowing advertiser to have more features when they're doing tweets like this. Like this carousel tweet, you can't just normally do. You got to go into the ads platform. Not everybody knows that. But just by knowing that you can go into the ads platform, it's as simple as unchecking. There's a box checked automatically called promoted tweets. Well, you're not going to promote this tweet. You're not going to spend money. So you just uncheck it before you tweet it out or before you schedule it. and the whole thing's free. And this is a great example. I highly recommend everybody bookmark this tweet because this is a great example of how you can be promoting your rooms. And if you're like us and you're hosting rooms all the time, you could sit here and set up a carousel and promote multiple rooms all in one tweet. I think that is so extremely powerful. So I really wanted to show that off to everyone. And the other tweet was me taking that JPEG that Andrew sent over to me and doing a tweet myself. And this will be the kind of tweet I'm going to definitely be putting out very regularly now, because what an easy way for me to promote on a regular basis. Like, here's what I'm doing. Here are the different rooms. Here's my upcoming schedule. Just by going to that Spaces dashboard, you can see everything I have coming up, everything that's scheduled. Now that we can schedule multiple rooms, I could schedule up to 10 now. So they can all be on that page at Spaces dashboard. This is huge. I am so thrilled that we're getting more features like this and having a great tool. And we're not being sponsored by Spaces Dashboard. Susan and I just really love this tool. We love all these tools we come across, but some of them are just go so much beyond. So many of them are, when you agree, Sue, so many of these are real plain. Like they're trying to take advantage of the fact that people are hosting room in Spaces and they want more information, more features than because where can we go in Twitter to easily, right now there is a way to go see your upcoming and past rooms, but you have to go into your settings and privacy section. Who thinks to do that?
I really think the third-party developers have been really listening hard to what's been said and really jumped on it quite quickly. And that's why, we're so lucky, really, in a way. I mean, I know we've said it before, but every week my inbox is kind of filled with another couple of DMs from people saying, can you try this out? Or, we put this together. What do you think of this? And sometimes I can't get around to doing them all, but I'm so interested in the fact that people are developing and trying to expand what we can do here on Spaces. It's definitely caught people's imagination, and for us as hosts, it is really widening what we can do. And as you say, certainly with stats and things, which I know we're about to talk about next, there's next to nothing really on Twitter. We've got sort of the how many people have hit that they're going to set their reminder and that they're going to come along. So they've pressed set reminder on the card that they've seen on their timeline, and they will get a notification, but they may or may not turn up to your Space Live. And then we've got the replay stats as well, and also split into how many people were in here live. But aside from that, it's sketchy and as we've said in the past, kind of unreliable at times as well if you're looking on different devices. So the third-party developers really do seem to have it summed up. Seem to be kind of streets ahead of Twitter in some respects, with some of this stuff, with search most definitely, with Spaces dashboard. I mean, I just think it's ludicrous the way things are going at the moment with Twitter and discoverability for Spaces. I can't work out what they're thinking. It's very frustrating.
Well, hopefully enough people have complained about it that they will, adjust course, right? And come up with better discoverability and, taking that Spaces dashboard, Spaces tab away from us that has so much discoverability attached to it. Whereas now this new audio tab is crazy. I hear more people complaining about it than anything. And so hopefully they're listening. We know they do listen. So hopefully they're taking what we're saying to heart. So Andrew also, as you may recall, last week was sharing some mind-blowing stats about Twitter Spaces. And he was telling us about these July stats, July 2022. And there's a visual now. I'm a visual. I need to see the visual. And this GIF, oh my gosh, I just had to share it with everybody because seeing it in front of you like this is mind-blowing that, 965,000 Twitter Spaces were created in that 1 month alone. 75 million participations, it says. That does not include replays. That's just trying to wrap your head around that many. I had no idea. And 1.9 million hours of audio, which comes out to 225 years hold on, I gotta wait for that JPEG to come back around. 225 years of original content. And then I love the GIF with the lady in her mouth open, like, because it is mind-blowing. It is truly phenomenal. I think a lot of people over time have discounted social audio. I think they felt like it was a fad with Clubhouse. Clubhouse started declining a bit. And I think people just started thinking, okay, this is not going to be what we thought it was going to be. You just look at these stats with Twitter Spaces, and I beg to differ.
Yeah, and I thought it was incredible. Like, even when I went back to edit for the podcast last week, you really could hear our brains breaking at the point where Andrew was giving out the stats that he was reading from the dashboard stats page. It was quite incredible. And as you say, to actually see those numbers, millions of people, hundreds of thousands of people. Social audio, I would suggest, isn't a fad. I don't know that it's completely found out what it is yet. But it's certainly a thing. It's certainly something.
Oh, most definitely. You put out a really great tweet today talking about this new audio tab with your thoughts. I definitely recommend everybody bookmark this thread, go through it later. But let's discuss this for a moment because, we have been talking about this new audio tab since it came out. We're not very happy with it. But you shared some really interesting thoughts. You want to just kind of break it out a little bit for us and for our listeners? And when we have Q&A in a bit, I would love for some of our listeners request that mic and share their thoughts about this as well.
Yeah, sure. So I suppose that, when I was talking about it, when we were talking about it last week on All Things Audio, I'd really only had the tab a matter of days, and I'd kind of opened and closed it, had a quick look at it. I could see it was dynamic. I'd had that bit of a conversation with Evan from from Product Twitter on the thread. But yeah, I've had kind of a chance to play with it a little bit now. There are a few drawbacks that I found that I don't particularly like. I'm going to reframe that. There's some feedback that I'd like to give to Twitter around this audio tab. Now, obviously, you've already just heard me talk about the fact that I feel like combining spaces in with this general audio tab really hasn't done anything to progress spaces discoverability. I'm kind of now left with the two spaces maybe that I can see in the space bar, and very, very infrequently am I seeing live spaces within the Daily Digest. And I can't kind of see any upcoming spaces. There's no possibility for me to kind of scroll through like there was on Spaces tab. So I'm definitely missing that. The other thing I think I can gather from what I've heard from other people talking about it on podcasts and different things, it seems that the podcast episodes that you see within those station playlists. So for those of you that don't have the tab, you go into the audio tab and there are several categories which are basically your topics that you've chosen within Twitter. So for me, I've got news, I've got marketing, I've got business and finance, I've got technology, and I think I've got arts and movies. And they are topics that I follow here on Twitter and would be within my Explore tab as general tweets under those different categories. But in this respect, what they are is stations. So when I hit on one of those, if I go to news, it brings up a pre-selected variety of episodes of podcasts, around between 5 and 10, I would say, different episodes from news providers. Now, it would seem that those episodes are actually those that are being listened to and shared by people that I'm following. So therefore, Twitter's suggesting that because I follow these people and these people like these podcasts, I might like to listen to them too. Now, so far, I've found that doesn't ring true for me. I'm not so interested in the episodes that are being served up to me. What you've got is like a thumb up and a thumb down, so you can vote up what you like and vote down what you don't. And I guess that does then, when you hit one of those, give you a message that says thank you. This allows Twitter to learn more about what you like and serve you with better content suited to you. But actually, I've downvoted an episode from the same podcast on several occasions, and I'm still seeing it as top in the list on one of my stations, which is quite annoying. I've also found that one of my own experiences of listening, when I'm listening to a podcast on, say, Spotify or Apple Podcasts, I will quite often be listening to that podcast while I'm on the train, but I'll be looking for the next one. Like, what am I going to be listening to next? What do I want to queue up? What episode? What show am I going to listen to next? And I tried to do that with stations, but I couldn't, because the minute I come out of the station to look at what might be in another station, it cuts the audio. And the other frustrating thing about that is when I go back into that station, it doesn't remember either the episode I was listening to or where I was within that episode. All it does is autoplay the top episode for me again. So I've heard the first sentence of one podcast about 5 times today where I've gone in and out of a station. Autoplay definitely needs knocking on the head, if you ask me. I am sick of it. I don't want it to autoplay at me. I want to be able to choose which ones I listen to. And I don't, if I'm going to be given a pre-select list and not be able to search for anything, then I most certainly want the decision as to whether or not I want it to play for me. I mean, anyone whose podcast episode has appeared top in any one of those stations over the last week is going to be delighted when they open up their podcast statistics, because they're going to look amazing, because anyone that's opened that station has literally racked up a play for them just by looking. They don't even have had to listen to very much of it. So yeah, I put all my thoughts down in this thread. Evan had asked for some feedback. I am going to tag him in it. I'm going to retweet it later on today. I'd love to know your comments on any of the different sections. It's got 8 tweets on the thread. Yeah, I'd love to have a conversation about it. There's lots more on there, but those are my kind of initial thoughts from today. So, yeah.
It's a great thread. I really appreciate you doing that and sharing, since you've had time to play around with it a little bit. I've been very confused by it. Like, for instance, there was one point last week, I didn't even notice something until Morgan had mentioned it and shared a screenshot. We have that little group DM with you, me, and some others that help us from time to time with co-hosting when we need help. And I just was so embarrassed of like, oh, I didn't notice this little thing. Like, yeah, when you open up a space or a podcast, from that top section, that when it's pulling up the category, that there's a place you can tap where it'll bring even more below it. And it's like, how did I not see that? But it just really shows that Twitter wasn't really thinking through, like, making stuff super obvious. If people are not like, what are we supposed to tap on the whole screen and like every little spot? Like, am I missing? Is there something hidden? Because that was, to me, it was super hidden. It wasn't obvious that, oh, there's a way to get more when you're in one of those sections. All I saw was, okay, I see this interesting image with multiple podcasts and or spaces, and you can just press one and it'll cycle through, or you can just manually tap on them, which is what I normally do. But I didn't realize that you could tap on, I think there was a little icon underneath it on the left, or the name itself of the topic, and then more stuff came up below it. It's like, I remember Morgan had like a screenshot of it. I'm like, how did you get to that screen? What am I missing? So I just thought that was a bit of a fail on Twitter's part, is having all this extra content, but not making it obvious of how to get to it. And the other thing I find very frustrating is, I know last week I said, adjust your topics, the Twitter topics. I did that because I did see some immediate changes, but not fully, because I'm not as interested in NFTs and Web3 as I was at the beginning of the year. I mean, I'm interested, but not like I want to see this all the time in my feed. So I took that out of the topics completely so that I could discover other things in this audio tab. And what's interesting, Suze, is that I went back into the tab while you were talking about it just now. And when you first go into it and you swipe up below at the bottom there, it'll have like 3 upcoming spaces. They're all NFTs. It was all about NFTs. I'm like, okay, I took that out of my topics. Obviously, I don't have as big of an interest. Why is it still showing me that? So that just didn't make sense to me. When I mentioned it last week, I was seeing an immediate change when you did adjust your topics. But that to me was weird. Like, okay, that was a week ago. Now how come all of a sudden I'm back to seeing all that stuff again? So I don't know. They need to work on this stuff. They really, really need to work on it. I put some stuff in the nest, breaking news. Twitter is trying to get our attention because they did. The Spaces team did a tweet in all caps. Who does a tweet in all caps, Suze? That's the equivalent of yelling. We all know that's yelling. I'm very surprised that they decided literally 10 minutes ago to do a yelling tweet to all of us. So it says, we heard you want to schedule more than one space at a time. So we just rolled it out, and now everyone can schedule 10 spaces up to 30 days in advance. So I've had this ability for a little bit of time now. I wasn't sure if it was just a test or if it was more widely rolled out. Now we know it has been rolled out to everyone. So that's good news if you've been wanting to schedule more than one space at a time, that you can do that.
I've had terrible issues with this. I mean, I had it, and last week I was all pleased about it and I was using it, and I scheduled more than one space, and then it disappeared over the weekend and I couldn't access it. I couldn't see any upcoming spaces. And in fact, this very space that we're in right now was one of those that I'd scheduled as an upcoming space, and I couldn't see it anywhere. The only way I've been able to access this space is via the card today. It wasn't in my, it wasn't under the calendar icon. There wasn't an upcoming spaces text anymore at the top right. So I was actually wondering whether or not this particular link for this space was even going to work today. I mean, it took me right up until the top of the hour when I hit it to know whether or not it was even still there anymore, because I'd scheduled it forward and then they'd removed the facility, the feature for me. So it was a little bit on edge there, but hopefully it will roll out and it will come back. But yeah, that was a moment that I could have done without this week, to be honest. If they're going to give you a feature, the fact that it just drops and disappears is just really annoying, because I was using it. So yeah,
the first time I used it, when I first got it and I was able to schedule more than one, I ran into the same issue at first, like, okay, where'd it go? And I thought that I lost it, and I thought, okay, is this link not going to work now? Should I not promote it? But then I remember I closed the app, came back in, and then if you look in this tweet, that screenshot, the first item, they show you that little calendar in the top right corner. And eventually that did pop up. And so when you go to create a space, you should see that when you've already scheduled other rooms and you tap on it. So did you notice that before, Suze, if you had that?
No, I didn't have that. I had nothing in that top corner because that had said upcoming spaces just as words. And so then, and I said to you, I don't know where that link has gone. I can't find it anywhere. And you said tap on the calendar and see, as though you were scheduling it, but nothing came up there either. So it was literally just from the actual card on the timeline in the end. That was the only way that I could see that was still available. And I could edit it. I could edit the card. I could still share the card. So I was 90% sure it was going to work today. But yeah, it was just a little bit irritating that they'd given me that ability to do that. I'd gone ahead and done it, but then they seemed to have pulled everything from it at the back so that I couldn't then access it again. But anyway, everything worked. It all turned out fine.
Excellent. Well, hopefully you will be able to start seeing that little icon in the top corner, because it's been working fine for me. It was very brief where there was nothing. I'm like, okay, how do I find it? It was almost as if Twitter turned the switch on, but was missing one element. That's what it felt like. And now I can get to it. And it sounds like you still need them to flip that switch for you.
We have some Clubhouse news, Madeline, don't we?
Yeah, a lot going on with this new houses. Have you been doing much with this or not really?
I have jumped in and out of some of the houses that Morgan has been hosting. I've enjoyed being involved with houses. I have to say, I'm not sure what the latest news on them is at the moment. I think, is it about replying just to houses posts? So only, I'm assuming that means only people that are invited to the house will be able to reply to those messages that they can see. Maybe Morgan can fill us in on it in a little minute or so. Yeah, sure. So this is one of the social audio apps that we've mentioned a few times, Wisdom, which is kind of positioning itself as being one for the educators. So people who've got some wisdom to share with other people can go over to use this app and, have the stage, have someone else up to talk to live on there as well. But it's just an interesting take in this Business Cloud article, where they've kind of headlined it, "Can Wisdom become the Facebook of social audio?" And the CEO, Deo Akinrinade, is basically talking about how social audio is all about connections, which is really where Facebook started. It was about getting in touch with your former connections, finding people that perhaps you had a connection with at school, kind of friends reunited style. Goodness, really showing my age now. But then, keeping those connections, having family connections, and just that idea that social audio can build those kind of connections. And could it be the Facebook of social audio, which I just found really interesting. I know there's a quote here that you pulled out from it, Madeline, where it says, she said that I believe the future of social audio is less about the hustle culture found on platforms like Twitter Spaces and Clubhouse, where many people listen to promotional talks about the latest NFT, credit repair scheme, or stock, and more about niche communities engaging in balanced one-to-one conversations on topics that matter. Now, that's the key on Wisdom, is that it's one-to-one. So you've only ever got one person and the host over there talking about a topic at a time, because they don't want it to get too crowded. Now, I liked that quote there, but I also wonder, I don't know, do we feel like this is still hustle culture over here? Are we still all, I'm not seeing half as many NFT spaces as I have been. I know you've just mentioned that you were seeing them because
Right.
in your audio tab, but is that really what's happening over here, or is it widening out a bit more? I kind of feel like it is, but maybe I'm wrong.
I think it is. I mean, I think it's changing. I think as social audio is evolving, I felt like when it was just Clubhouse before Spaces and I was on Clubhouse, every room felt like a TED Talk. Like it really seemed to be about who are the experts that are just going to talk to everybody else. And like, you can't talk, you can't come on stage, you can't be a part of the conversation. It just felt like you were just in the audience listening to a TED Talk. That's how I felt for quite some time. And that was just my own personal experience. I know it evolved over time, but I just was more drawn to Spaces because I just felt like it was more about conversations. I mean, sure, lots of us like to come on here and use the opportunity to teach. I'm very big with that. But I also just feel like they're just great conversations. But this article really drew me with that quote of hers, because it's like she's like looking in a whole different lens that I think is very important to be, looking into. I like the fact that it's these one-on-one conversations is different, but I really like the way she is approaching this.
Yeah, and as we said when we first started All Things Audio, there is so much that can be done with social audio. There's room for all of it, and I really don't think we've seen even half of it being covered by people yet. There are so many different social audio standalone apps that are doing it in different ways, and doing different things with it. And it just continues to evolve and grow and find its feet, really. This is still really new technology and really new stuff to have this live audio only element on social media platforms, but also in these standalone apps as well. It's still really quite new. So yeah, it's just watching it grow, watching where it goes, watching where different people take it. And I think that's what interests me so much in it anyway.
Absolutely. I just want to mention, we don't have to go into detail, but I did put in the nest this really interesting thread with an article about podcasting. I know we get a lot of podcasters here. I think some people might find it interesting. They might want to bookmark it and read it later. The thread is really, it really gets you thinking, is from the co-founder of Anchor. And he's saying the future of podcasts is going to be videos. And it's a really interesting read. I don't agree with it all, but I found it to be super interesting. And I think some of you here might really like to read this. So there's a link to the article, or you can just go through his thread. Super fascinating. But yeah, I'm so glad Morgan made it, because I want to hear more about this Clubhouse news.
Hi, both. Well, very quickly, just on the podcast will become videos. Fascinating thread, slightly controversial writer, but it's a very interesting idea. And we know that YouTube introduced a dedicated tab on their site for the US audience for podcasts. So yeah, I do think this is a really big and interesting move. On the Clubhouse stuff, the general story is they're still working very hard to build out a kind of rich group chat experience around social audio. So a house is a thing that has members. You can only be in it if you're invited, but once you're in it, you can do kind of two things. One of them is the talking to each other thing, and that's obviously audio. And the other thing you can do is take part in a group chat for all the members of the house. So the updates that we saw this week and this leak from Alessandro is just about the group chat part of it, really. So this is just becoming more and more sophisticated group chat. One of obviously the important things for group chat is being able to control your notifications. So if you think about using Slack or Discord, you have pretty fine-grained notification controls. Until this week, Clubhouse didn't really have that. So they've put those in place now, and you can do things like say, look, only actually notify me if someone directly mentions me. Otherwise, don't. Or only tell me if a room starts in this house, and I want to go and speak, but don't tell me about any of the messages in the group chat. So this has been a really important piece, and it's now in place. Houses are still in beta, so this is part of getting them ready to something that is like a thing that everybody can use and have a good experience. So that's a part of it. And the thing that Alessandro released is another part of that. So this hasn't been rolled out for the beta users yet, but it's a little glimpse of what's coming in a week or two, which is at the moment, the group chat is just one like big thing. If you want to reply to somebody who said something, you post a new message in the group chat. What you can't do at the moment is reply directly to somebody. So that's going to come soon. But again, this is just another way to have something that looks like Slack or Discord, but it's built around audio first. So you can reply and have reply threads to messages. The other one, which hasn't been talked about much, but is, I think, for not less so for Twitter people, but for Clubhouse people, very exciting, is the ability to post messages in the chat. Sorry, post images in the chat. So until now, there's no way to share an image on Clubhouse, apart from in your profile picture, which is the little hack people use. But we'll also get the ability, hopefully this month, to share images in the house chat. So yeah, this is just like Clubhouse is building out a really sophisticated group messaging platform that's integrated with audio. And that's the interesting part.
That is interesting. Thank you for sharing all that. What do you think, Suze?
Yeah, I love it, and I think I love what you said there about the notifications. That makes absolute sense, because I know that was one of the things that really annoyed people in the early days of Clubhouse, was all the different notifications. Like I'd wake up in the morning and have like 80 notifications from Clubhouse. So yeah, I think it's right that they've put that in place to allow you to filter the noise and only get what you really want, especially from these houses. I think that's a great shout.
Yeah, I think you're right. That's a huge part. There's a lot of people who would have tried Clubhouse in spring last year would have got burnt by the notifications. It was a huge issue. There were so many. And to be honest, as somebody who's been on the beta for houses, there've been a lot of notifications. So it's really great to see them roll out what are like really fine-grained notification controls. The controls for houses now are probably slightly better than the controls for the rest of the app. So that's really interesting. The other part of the story here, which I think in the pinned tweet I mentioned, is the way of looking at this is they've separated out things to do with houses from things to do with the rest of the app. So this is another little suggestion of each house is kind of its own contained thing within Clubhouse. It has its own settings, including for notifications. So this begins to look a bit more like Discord with servers. So if you're a member of a house, it's a bit like being a member of a server, and you set things up for that server. And it could be different on different parts of the app. So that's also an interesting way of looking at it.
Very interesting. Do you think it's because like some people are just going to want to use Clubhouse just for houses?
Yeah, I do think that's going to happen. I mean, I love the public hallways too. So I hope that if you go there and you have a few houses, much like you might have a few Discord servers or Slack or even like a Telegram group that you go to often, that's going to be a great place for you. You can have a really good experience and you'll be with the people that you want to be with. but maybe now and again you want to go out and see a show together, or go and go to the theatre, something like that. So you will go out to the public hallways. And I also hope that, because houses still are audio first, unlike Discord and Slack, which are much more about typing your messages to each other. When you're in a house that you really enjoy, it's a place that's for speaking to each other. So you get really comfortable with using social audio as a speaker and not a listener. And I think once you get used to that, you're probably much more likely to go and start rooms and speak elsewhere. So it's a really good kind of training wheel for building your confidence as a speaker in an environment that isn't public. You're with trusted people in a much more intimate environment. So I think that's probably quite hopeful for creation in social audio as well.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I love that. Great take on it, Morgan. Thank you so much for sharing with us today. Andrew, you're up next.
Hey, listen, I wanted to pop in because the first 20 minutes of that show, you talking about Spaces dashboard like that, made me so happy. I'm really grateful for you. And again, like you mentioned, it's not a sponsorship. This is all based on me building tools, listening to you guys with the things I think you'll need. And I just want to say it's really appreciated when you spend the time to highlight some of the big features and functionalities that we have added to it. And I almost wanted to carry on a little trend we started last week of dropping another stat that's just happened yesterday or today, can't remember now. We hit, would you believe, into the dashboard, we went over the 4 million mark. So we now have 4 million spaces indexed into the dashboard.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
And we are looking, by the end of the month, we will hit 1 million hosts.
Incredible. So,
Wow.
This is why discoverability and search is so needed. Because if I'm only seeing 2 spaces up on that space bar and there are 1 million people out there hosting spaces, then I'm missing out on a whole lot of spaces. I'm not even going to try. So, it's crazy. How can we be hitting numbers like that, but still seeing such little activity around spaces in the app? I can't even imagine why Twitter would want that to be that way. It just doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah, and in August, the stats show that in July we hosted 965,000. In August, we actually went over the million. We had 1,176,000.
It is quite amazing to see those numbers. When you were saying them to us last week, it was pretty amazing. But once I saw your tweet with that GIF, I'm so visual. I need to see those numbers in front of me. It was mind blowing. And I see Denise is here and her hands are raised. Hey, Denise, how are you?
Hi, I'm good. And thank you for holding this space. I pop in when I get an opportunity. My question is exceptionally rudimentary. Why don't I have the scissors? I can't clip anything. It's, or am I way behind the curve?
You should have it. It's been rolled out globally. The only thing I can think of is maybe you need to update your Twitter app. When was the last time you did that?
I did that because I was getting some help from Legion. And I don't know if you know, he does a lot of stuff on Spaces.
We know who he is.
Yeah, he's been very helpful. But he's saying to me, that's what I did, because he's saying to me, my only concern was if I take away my app, will I lose everything that I've got in my timeline if I take it off and have to put it on again?
No, all you do, you can actually remove the app out of your phone, reinstall it. It all has to do with being logged in. When you're logged in, everything is still saved from your login. Are you able to also access clips, or have you been able to access clips from the web? So like right now, in addition to being on mobile, because I'm speaking, of course, I also am in front of my desktop computer, and I have this room up on desktop as well. And you should also see it when you're going back to a replay or listening to a live recorded room. You should definitely see the scissors on desktop, but you should see it on mobile too, because Twitter says it was globally rolled out. It means everyone should have it.
Okay, well, I can't check that now because I'm on the telephone, but I will check it and see if it's on the computer, because it's just a matter of me trying to clip certain sections of the show. So, I will take your advice and then maybe pop back, but at another date. But thank you guys, because thank you for the help anyway. I do appreciate the stuff that you do. It's very helpful. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you for being here. And the only other thing I can think of is maybe it's still rolling out to a few more people. Maybe you're just in the last group and you haven't gotten it yet. I mean, you should see it. I mean, right now in this room, you should see at the bottom right, you should see scissor. So I'm surprised you don't.
Hey, Angel.
I also don't have the clip sign on my Spaces. I did the updates and I've got the discoverability and all of that, but I don't have the scissors. And I know that they were bringing some of the emojis back in the Twitter Spaces. I don't have those either, but I know that many people have had them, and I understood that you had to update to have all of those, but those are things that I'm very clearly missing.
If somebody can see it on the web, when they're logged into their account, they see it on web but not mobile, then I'm thinking something's up with their app. And it could be that Denise does need to remove the app off of her phone and reinstall it. The thing is, whenever you're having issues with something, closing the app, like plenty of times people have an issue with being able to become a speaker in a room. And many times, if you're trying to get in and it's not working, you just close the Twitter app, reopen it, and then try again. And that should fix whatever issue, because we run into this all the time. George is here, and we run into this all the time with our Saturday room Twitter audits when we review Twitter profiles. I will, give the mic to somebody, and for 10 minutes, they can't get in. And I just tell them, close the app, come back in, and that should fix it. And many times it does. If you're still having issues with something with Twitter and that doesn't fix it, then check to make sure you have the most current download. And if you do, and it still doesn't fix it, then just remove that app. And this applies to the other apps too. This is just a very common. Another thing, power down your phone. It is a mini computer. I think people forget it's a little computer. When was the last time you did that? So Denise, that would be another thing to try. Also, just thinking out loud, you might want to just, next, when you're done with this, of course, turn off your phone, turn it back on, try going back in and seeing if that fixes it. So hopefully that helps for everybody.
I wonder if it's symptomatic of what we were discussing earlier, which is where features seem to be thrown out randomly to various people. And while they're saying it's global, these rollouts sometimes take longer than it takes for them to send press releases. Everybody's now got
sometimes it does. Usually when they say global is because they've pushed it out to everyone. Or if there's anyone out there that still doesn't have it, it's like they're at the tail end. That's why the whole Clips has been rolled out globally for a while. It's been a while now. I mean, it's weeks, if not a month. I mean, it's long enough where everyone should have it now. Thank you to all of our speakers who came on and shared so much great stuff. And we're available in all of your favorite podcast apps. We're out there, All Things Audio. You can also go to allthingsaudiopodcast.com as well.
You certainly can. And you can catch us here on Twitter and use the hashtag AllThingsAudio, and we'll pick that up throughout the week. So that's it for this week. But thank you so much to everyone that's been here in the space with us and those of you listening. And we'll catch up with you next week.
Bye, everybody.